I'm Ivonne Hammoud, registered social worker and owner of Moon Counselling. But out of the office, I'm a mom, wife, daughter, sister, and friend. Join me each week as I sit with a special guest to discuss everyday things that impact our mental health. We'll be chatting about everything from mental health and relationships to media and current events, as well as personal experiences and reflections, all in the hopes of normalizing our humanness and helping you see that you're not alone. This is Outside the Therapy Room. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we are joined by one of our other amazing team members, Alex. Hi Alex.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good, you?
I'm good, thanks. Do you want to introduce yourself to the people?
Sure. My name is Alexandria, either one. I'm a registered social worker here at Moon Counselling. Also a mom. I don't know what else to really share.
That's okay. Well, yeah. I think we're talking today about life transitions, and I think you went through a life transition here at New Moon, going from being an intern to just recently graduating from your MSW program and now officially being an associate here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess previous intern turned registered staff, which is kind of a huge life transition and
yeah,
pretty cool, but also terrifying.
Well, life transitions for you. So if you haven't guessed already, our conversation today is all about life transitions. We put it out there in social media and asked some of our followers what kind of life transitions they have gone through. And I'm just going to share a list of what they said along with a list of other life transitions. So, divorcing an abusive partner, leaving a secure paying job to start your own business. Hi, that was me. Partner receiving a chronic medical diagnosis and changing our lives. Yes, that's very difficult. Mm-hmm. Moving in with a partner, caring for a sick parent, moving away for school, like university, planning a wedding, getting married, and then some other ones that can also be categorized as life transitions are accidents, buying a house, changing jobs, divorce, getting married, having a baby, leaving for school, relocation, retirement, selling a house, illness, significant loss, like the loss of a person, a job, a pet, anything that has strong meaning to you, and starting or switching careers. So with the list that I shared, is there any that I may have missed or that you have thought of that I haven't?
I think that I would maybe think that I think life transitions from like going to adulthood and having to leave parents' homes and I mean, I hear a lot now, like traveling before school is happening. Like those are huge, like moments in our life. I think that we feel sometimes that they can be positive as well, not just negative.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the life transitions that we just discussed here are obviously very impactful to your life and kind of like the beginning of chapters, whether they be positive things like leaving for school, getting married, having children, all of these wonderful things. It's also tied in, like, I mean, that's a huge life change, a whole different kind of event that's happening. And the same thing if you're dealing with things that are a little bit more challenging and harder. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to say challenging and harder because all those things can be hard, but things that are maybe more of a, hurt or more quote unquote negative things that could happen, like leaving an abusive relationship. Mm-hmm. While that's great and can be celebrated, it comes with a lot of challenges on its own. Dealing with a parent who is sick or a partner who is sick, like all of these transitions are very impactful to our lives. And some can be exciting while others may be a little bit more difficult of a transition. So I think you made a good point though. I think there's a lot of life transitions that we've gone through that maybe don't fit in any of these, like going from elementary school to high school. That's a huge life transition. That's scary. Yeah. And you're little and you're dealing with like new people, new routine, new changes, like all of these things that can bring up a lot of anxiety in kiddos. Or even like becoming a sibling.
Yeah.
I know I was really stressed out about that with my oldest when we were pregnant with my youngest. I was really worried about how his life was all of a sudden going to come to like this big change. And I really tried to prepare him as much as I could. But yeah.
I also think there's a huge difference between a sudden life transition and a planned life transition, right?
For sure.
Like, it makes such a big difference when, of course, like some of the things we've heard that people have shared with you this week about like leaving an abusive relationship, all those things that are really heavy. Of course, they're all heavy, but those are sudden things that we actually can't prepare for all the time, which sometimes adds a little bit, I guess, more complexity, I guess I would say.
It does, yeah.
to those situations, which makes a difference.
It does. And I think it's difficult on both hands, right? Like, you know, having a baby, that's really exciting. And everyone comes to you and they're like, oh my God, you must be so excited. And you're like, yeah, and also freaking terrified. So like sometimes those like quote unquote positive things can also bring in a lot of like that fear and uncertainty. And like you've mentioned, those things that are unplanned, like an accident or the passing of a loved one, as much as we want to gain control in our lives, we can't fully plan when or how that's going to happen. And that, I mean, as humans, we really like control. So that can be really, really tricky.
Control is a beautiful thing, isn't it? I think too, like even planned things, I think we automatically hear planned and we're like, it's gotta be okay. We're doing so much work to make sure it's okay.
Yeah.
But planning stuff can be terrifying.
Yeah.
It is hard to actually hold things out when we plan things for it, because we make plans that don't actually deal with like little pieces that are going to happen without our knowledge. Planning is hard. And it gives us maybe added anxiety. I know when I plan for things and it doesn't go the way that I necessarily wanted it to go, generally my anxiety's peaked. So I think that, of course, what you were saying, part of that control and actually making sure that, I guess we have a good understanding of what we're trying to have control over, and that is helpful, but that's not an easy place to be.
No, I think you're right. Like, I don't know. I mean, before we started recording, we talked about weddings, and I know a lot of people who have gotten married or have like are recent, like I can't speak, are soon to be married. And just like the whole focus on planning the wedding and the actual life change of having to live with this person, and maybe you're moving in together for the first time after you're married, or you already move in together, and so you feel like the transition isn't going to be as challenging after your husband and wife or whatever married couple. Like those things aren't really talked about a lot. And again, it's only talked like in more of a positive way, which
it's not always positive. We know that. Right?
Like what? The toothpaste is all over the like the bathroom sink. This isn't cool. Like all of these things causes some form of change in your life. And again, like we mentioned, either planned or unplanned, there's this change. And a lot of us are uncomfortable with change. I mean, we are very routine kind of individuals, human species, whatever you want to call us. And we like having predictability. And when we don't have that, it can bring up a lot of anxiety, a lot of discomfort, a lot of unknown. And when everyone else is responding to this change as it being positive or exciting, it can kind of make you feel alone. Again, we're talking about maybe one part of that life transition, but like, it can be really hard to deal with all of the change that happens either suddenly or more gradually as things are being planned. Yeah.
And I think too, like you just said that, like, I don't know, made my brain wake up for a moment, is that it's not always going to be clear cut, right? Like when we're talking about life transitions, I feel like a lot of us look at them and we're like, you know what? It's this moment in time and it's going to pass. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes life transitions last a long time. Yeah. Sometimes when we're looking at people getting married and like you're saying, the toothpaste, that's a lifelong journey, right? A lifelong journey that there's always going to be another piece that's tying into some of those life transitions that maybe you haven't actually gotten comfortable with, or you don't actually know how to work through that, which is okay. Some of them take a long time, but I think we have to be kind of like good to ourselves. Life transitions are there for a reason. They help us understand that change is needed, of course.
Yeah.
But sometimes that change is not always the best option, and we don't see that until later.
Yeah.
Right? So there's so many different sides to it, and I think we can talk in circles for hours and hours about so many different ways to think about them. But I mean, we know that generally a lot of people see the negative first because of how they feel with that control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's also hard to know if that was the best decision.
Like, trusting ourselves? What?
Yeah. Yeah. Or always going to the what ifs, which can be so easy, especially in moments that are a little bit more difficult. And so if we do make that choice to move or to get married, and we do have that choice in that moment and a little bit more of that control, we, like, in difficult moments, we might ask ourselves, like, was this the right choice? Was this the transition that I wanted my life to be in right now? And that's like an impossible question, because we will never know. Like, there isn't this magic 8-ball that we can look into and be like, ooh, what are our lives like if we didn't make this decision?
You mean you didn't get that rule book?
No.
Weird.
But like, for the ones that don't have, like, the ones that we don't have control in, those can be really hard, because then we look at our lives before this big life event, this big life transition that we had absolutely no control over happened. Yeah. And we lose part of ourselves within that too, especially caring for a partner. Your relationship changes, your dynamic changes. You're more going into this relationship as a caretaker, instead of, like, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's lightness and romance and passion and intimacy within that as well, but it just looks different now. Or it's, again, like, just, it's all that different change that you're having to deal with and kind of, you know, continue moving forward. But in all of these things, and we're not going to fully dive into it because, like you said, we could be talking in circles or switching to different topic areas. But I think in all of these, and not only are you dealing with a life transition, you're also dealing with a mix of complex emotion. Like grief, anxiety, joy, like all of these,
all those heavy ones,
all of the heavy ones. And also, like, again, mixed in there, the complexities is that we might be feeling a mix of emotions with each of those things, which can make it really, really difficult. So I guess one of the questions we got from one of our followers is, how can we prepare for transitional periods? Is that even possible?
That's a good question, I think.
Yeah.
And I think there's like a yes and no answer to that, right? I think, like we said, there's no rule book. I think you absolutely can prepare to, I guess, work through that loss of control feeling.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you can ever really be prepared for something that we might not actually know how it plays out for us, right?
Yeah. I think it really depends too, right? Like, for moving, selling your house and moving.
It's all planning.
Right. It's all planning. It's very annoying planning.
Until the truck doesn't show up on time, something goes wrong. It's all planning, right? We plan.
Yeah. And we can also plan, like, especially if it's in a different city or a different area of the city, we can plan for, we're going to go for a walk and get to know, or we're going to drive around it before we move in to see, like, where's our new grocery store? What school is this kiddo going to be going to? Yeah. What is our drive to work going to look like? We can try to plan all of those things. But again, like, we're trying to plan the best that we can. Yeah. It may not always go that way. Again, like, the truck might show up late and then you have your stuff. Or you might not get the keys on time because stuff happened with a lawyer. Like, we can plan as best as we can, even for situations that we do have control over, and it might still not go the way that we planned. Yeah. I think it's also, like, I don't know about you, but sometimes planning can either help relieve some anxiety, because at least you have, like, options for what to do if scenario A happens, what to do if scenario B happens. But for other, like, in other instances, or for other people, creating all of these plans can actually increase anxiety. What's your take on that?
Oh, yeah, I think, I mean, like, I was just looking at, and I was thinking about, like, the birth of a baby. And I was like, I feel like that's, like, the most planned event ever.
Yes.
And then it never goes the way it's planned.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm saying that because, like, when it happened for me, I had like this moment where I was like, okay, everything is planned out for you. And I was terrified because of that plan, because it wasn't the plan I wanted.
Yeah.
It wasn't the plan I asked for. And it was out of my control, even though everything was in my control.
Right.
But I feel like in moments like that, when, planning is great, but maybe it's not something we actually wanted, of course my anxiety was higher, right? Of course it was going to be something that was causing me additional stress every single moment. I think the other side of it is that I am a planner. I'm an organized person. So, I mean, planning is always going to be something for me that I'm like, yes, we're going to go forward with this. It's going to be amazing. And then I just have to deal with the downfall.
Yeah. Well, it's not relief because you're able to have a little bit of control in the planning.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I have a little bit of control. Okay, me too when I was pregnant both times. Like, create a birth plan. Okay, like, yay. I'm going to create this plan. It's going to be beautiful. I'm going to have a playlist. Everything's going to be wonderful. Up to a point where they're like, throw that freaking plan out. You're going in for a C-section.
Like, what do you mean?
What? This was not in the plan. And I think you see that in so many movies too, where they're like, that wasn't in my birth plan. Like, it can be so hard to do that. But I think creating the birth plan, again, we're talking about pregnancy, so this may not fully sit with you, but any kind of plan, it just gives you that feeling of control for that moment. And exactly as you said, you also need to just be prepared that it may not go in that way. It might not go in that direction. And I think that moves into like our next place of setting realistic expectations. When these things happen, we might have like, we're getting married. We might have an expectation that the wedding is going to go beautifully and everyone's going to be so great and I'm going to feel this way and I'm going to walk in and like all of this is going to be wonderful. Same with like, you know, like buying a house, changing jobs. You could be like, my expectations, I'm going to be happier at this job. It's going to be easier. It's more money. It's closer to home. Everything's going to be more wonderful with this job. But sometimes we don't really allow for, like, they just become somewhat of an unrealistic expectation. And that can be really hard because now we're dealing with the disappointment that this big life transition isn't meeting all of our expectations. And also, this is a big life transition. Like, we're kind of sitting in that. What are your thoughts on expectations?
I think I keep on thinking about vacation. It doesn't seem like this huge life transition, but it is for some people. It's planned life transition. And I'm thinking about like my upcoming vacation. And how I have this like, oh my gosh, you should see my notes. They're amazing. They're so organized. I have like everything down for the days. I'm like, this is where we're going to be. It's going to be amazing. I'm not going to have to worry about any like time with nothing happening. Oh my goodness. We were looking the other day and I was like, okay, these are the days we have to do this. These are the days we have to do this. But instantly I was like, oh, I am getting ahead of myself. Like it's not attainable. I know it's not, but I have this like goal that I'm like, I'm going to go and going to Kentucky. And we're like, okay, we're going to do all these things. And I'm like, okay, but now we have to stay an extra day. And what am I going to do then? Is it just going to be nothing? And now I'm like stressed. I'm so stressed to the point that I'm like, okay, but I have to be the person that plans this. I'm the planner. I'm going to do this. And then I worry. I worry because, like, of course, it's like putting together IKEA furniture, right? When you travel with your partner, sometimes it doesn't go perfectly. So then I'm like waiting and I'm holding out for this spot that I'm like, okay, I have to fill this space because if I don't, who's going to? And it might end up in like that horrible fight in the car that we have when we're always on vacation and so sick of each other. But I find that in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? I think what I try to focus on with something like a vacation or maybe a move or maybe going to school is within that transition and the way that I have to work through things is in the grand scheme of things, does it matter? All those things that are going to go wrong, they're going to go wrong regardless at some point.
Yeah.
It just gets to be how we deal with them. Like somebody's asking, can you plan for them? No, I don't know if we can plan for them perfectly, but I think we can choose every single moment if we want to make it positive or negative.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like while you were talking about your like travel plans, I immediately thought of Disney.
Oh goodness, never.
Like Disney, you have to, they make you plan everything because then you have to have your fast pass for all of these. It's just like complete pandemonium. And the first time that we went, I was like that. I'm like, had such high expectations. The kids are going to be great. My youngest was 3 months old when we first went to Disney, and my oldest was 2.
Such a brave woman.
3. It was actually it was more for me really. But we went and I was expecting like naps are going to happen. This is what we're going to do. We built up such high expectations. And even like, and I like that you actually brought up vacation, because yes, that can be a big life transition for some people, especially, you know, when like growing up, family vacations maybe didn't happen. Being able to take a family vacation on your own, or even just like with a partner, with friends on your own, like that can be like this exciting thing that you never thought you were going to get. So it can be all of that, but there's just such this high expectation that I can remember putting on myself and my family, saying everyone's going to have the time of their life. There's going to be no negativity. We're in the happiest place on earth. Like,
if you're not happy, I don't want to hear about it.
Better be happy. We get there. My son had like a meltdown because he missed his nap because we were in the line to see Minnie or Mickey or whoever, and it just didn't go as planned. And at that time, my husband had to remind me to stay present. He's like, Yvonne, it's fine. We're here. He's having a meltdown. Let's just let it be, and we'll like pick back up and everything will be fine. And it's having those realistic expectations that something's probably gonna go wrong. We hope for the best, but also if something does go wrong, we know that we are going to be able to figure it out in the moment. Yeah. And again, like I can remember my wedding. I'm like, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to have no hiccups. And someone's like, Yvonne, best advice, something's going to go wrong. Assign somebody to deal with it so that you're not the one that's being, you know, told about this. And something did go wrong. We ran out of chicken nuggets for the little kids that were there. Like, how dare you? I know. And I didn't hear about it until like, I think we got back from our honeymoon and we were like, oh yeah, like it's so hilarious, the chicken nuggets. And so we had to like go and do this. And I'm like, thank you. I'm glad that I took that person's advice and gave that to someone else to deal with. But these things are going to happen. Yeah. Again, we are talking about expectations when it comes to things that we're, you know, have choice in making. But there's the other things that we talked about, like accidents. Like accidents, something happening to a parent or a family member or a partner. Like those expectations can also change. The expectation for, you know, medical support, how things are going to look like in this new stage or this new place in your relationship with a parent, with a partner, with whoever. Those kinds of things can also be impactful because we have these high expectations for how it's going to be or how we are going to show up for that. I'm going to be the best caretaker ever. We got this. We're full of positivity. But we also have to expect that it's not going to be positive all the time. We can try to create the most comfortable space for the person that we're caring for and still have moments where we feel like shit or where we need to maybe take a step back. So it's important, again, to kind of just check in gently on our expectations to see if they're realistic or not.
Yeah. And I think like part of really like paying attention to what's attainable, what's realistic, all of those things together. It made me think about when you were talking about the previous topic, and like now that we've moved over a little bit more to a little bit more of like the heavy negative side of things that can happen. I still think there's such a connection in remembering that when you look around and like maybe in that moment, maybe you're in the world, everything, other people are going through these things as well. You're not alone. Yeah. You're never going to be alone in any of these things. I wish I could say you're like this amazing person that's only dealing with this, like, but you're not, right? Like we're all feeling those things in moments, and maybe somebody doesn't understand fully because we don't want to take that away either. Yeah. But I think it's also okay to pay attention that there is support, right? There's people that are going to be in your corner or know how to support you in the way that may be helpful for you, or may help us at least understand what we do need.
Yeah.
But I think part of that, I guess, realization is when we try to actually plan and be attainable, it's reminding ourselves that, first of all, we don't have to do it by ourselves. Second, like, we can always ask for help. It's there for a reason.
Yeah.
And that is part of being, like, really, really able to understand that the attainable side of it, you have to look at those hard things too. It is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's always going to be uncomfortable when we don't know what we're supposed to do with something. But I think there's a little bit of magic in that as well, to really understand where you want to be with something, how you want to proceed with it. And my brain is short-circuiting right at this moment because I forgot where I was kind of going with that second part of it.
But you said something that came up for me, and maybe this will like reignite your brain. But I think asking for help, that can be so challenging for some people. It can be a very vulnerable place to be, but we're not meant to do things alone. Like, as humans, our makeup really is made to be codependent in some capacity, right? Not like, I feel like codependency also gets a bad rep sometimes, but we are dependent individual. Like, we do depend on our parents to care for us, even like animals, like all of these different living things in the world require support and community and a village. And, you know, we have a topic coming up, another podcast topic on friendships, and we'll get to it a little bit more in that one. So stay tuned, folks. But I think, you know, we might want to ask for help, or we might want to be part of this community, and that can be a challenge on its own. And so being resourceful and finding supports in other places, and also expectations there for how people can support you. But yeah, like, a lot of those things can be really, like you said, just the adaptivity, expectations, just really kind of reflecting and checking in on ourselves and what it is that we are needing to fully support us first, so that we're able to support whatever thing is happening around us or another person, depending on the change and challenge.
That area that I guess people are like, we're going to drone on and on and on about self-care, and everybody's like, self-care, I know
we're broken records.
But like, it's so important, right? It's such a big area that, as much as it sounds like people are just like pushing and pushing and pushing, it's being pushed for a reason. Because it is probably like the starting point for everything. So you can be prepared. Because if you are not feeling like the best in the beginning, you're not going to be able to prepare for something like that, because it's going to feel heavier than maybe it is in that moment. Or maybe it is just really heavy, and you need to be really, really prepared within yourself to be able to manage it. And that's okay. There's no clear way of doing that. I don't think there's supposed to be. We're human. We're messy.
Things are complicated. It's all that. But
we're all messy.
Exactly. And I think like the prepare, yes, like to answer that question again, we can, but also with the expectation that we might have to throw that plan out the window, completely chuck it and reformat, or that, you know, it might help us feel okay in that moment to make us feel like we have control, but it might not go anything like that. Or we might not even feel like what we need aligns with the original plan. And so then we need to reevaluate, recheck, like reflect on what it is that we are needing in that moment. Another thing that can be helpful when it comes to life transitions is like a routine. We're so routine. I mentioned that at the beginning already. But like, even for kids, like, that's one of the main things that they do at school is like the first week of school, they're building their routine. They come in, they hang their backpacks in their cubbies, they put on their indoor shoes, they sit in circle time. Like, all of these things are very routine, and that helps us. It is actually can be a form of self-care for us to stay in that routine and to have somewhat of a predictable moments in our lives. Obviously we can't, like, there's also the thing with the routine being rigid or being more flexible. Again, maybe a conversation for another day, but to be really rigid in a routine can actually increase anxiety at times when something comes up that isn't planned, that goes that doesn't allow us to complete our routine. And we can also have moments of routine, like our sleep wake up times. Yep. Those we can try our best to keep to a routine, like are the times that we eat, or how we choose to take care of ourselves at the end of the day. Maybe we go for a nightly walk, or we go to the gym, or we meditate, or we do some gentle stretching. Like these things can be part of the routine that we develop for ourselves, to continue, again, like taking care of ourselves through these big transitions.
Yeah, you said something too about, because I'm like, oh yeah, we're talking about kids at this point. I'm like, that's a whole nother thing.
That's a whole other topic.
We're not going to go into that in entirety. But when I think about that, and I'm thinking about this idea that kids are very resilient, right? Of course they are, but life transitions are hard for kids.
Yeah.
Right? Like routine is such an important thing, so that when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? I'm thinking about like my own child, and I'm like, I'm so rigid sometimes with routines because it what keeps me sane, right?
Yeah.
But then but then I'm also realizing in this moment too that like there's been many times, right? We're never perfect parents, that my planning or my expectations for those things are really just not possible for my child. And explaining and trying to like tell them why it's important is not always going to work, right? Yeah. Routines are important, but we also have to remember that people go about coping and different routines and all those things differently. Yeah. People are going to deal with things differently. And it's always going to come up for, I don't know, maybe a move is going to be super anxiety filled for me, but maybe for my child, it's going to be all excitement. We can't always sit on the same spot when we're thinking about how things are being dealt with. So when we're asking this question, can we plan? I mean, yeah, I think we can plan as best as we can, like you said, but let's also take a step back and realize that who are we planning for? Who are we trying to actually... Is it for you? Great. Let's work on that. If it is for your child, if it's for your partner, are they asking for that?
Yeah.
Do they actually want you to be planning for that? Or are you trying to do it to make it feel better for you?
Yeah.
That makes a difference, right? We can't push that on people.
And sometimes when we feel like we're lacking control in one area, we try to get it somewhere else.
Absolutely, we do.
And that can sometimes be through our kiddos or through our partners or through another means. And so it's definitely just checking in on that.
Yeah.
And doing the hard piece, which is recognizing our behavior and our emotions and how it may be impacting us and other people. But I think, like, yes, you're right. I was also very rigid with routines when it came to my kiddo around nap time and sleep. I was like, we cannot go to dinner today because my kiddo needs to be in his bed at like 7. So like I was rigid in that, but you're right. It did keep me sane. And sometimes I was able to be more flexible depending on how I was feeling, the people that I was with, how my kiddo was doing. And so I think, like, you're right. We can set up, I'm thinking right now of like somebody going through a loss. Right. Obviously, things are definitely going to be off of routine for the first few days afterwards. And that's completely normal and acceptable. But eventually, there's going to come a time where you're naturally going to fall back into your routine.
And I think we need it.
And we need it. Like, right? Like, that's the stable thing that's kind of piecing us together, or like keeping us there.
And it makes us feel like life is still going. Even when it feels like it's gone. Like, life still needs to feel like it's moving forward, so we have a chance, right, at actually being, I guess, the person we need to be in those moments. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not perfect. Yeah. But there has to be some form of routine or normalcy, we'll say, to at least feel like there's something moving forward, I think.
Yeah. And I'm sure, again, like we've kind of really briefly touched into some of these different life transitions, but I'm thinking even caring for a sick parent or a loved one, like there probably is a little bit more routine depending again on what that illness is. And so again, the routine might come at you because this is the routine that you need to have. Again, like becoming a parent, there may be a routine that your baby picks up on, and so now you're naturally put into this new routine. Somebody may get ill in your family and you're having to take care of them, and that may naturally fall into a routine of doctor's appointments, medication, all of these different things. But it's also developing a routine for yourself and making sure, again, that you're focusing in on you and what your how you're feeling so that you're able to better support all the people that may need your support. And I think that also goes into like the next thing on like, you know, tips that we're kind of sharing here, but like self-talk. Oof. Yeah. We both like oof, because self-talk, as we know, as moms, human beings, and therapists, like we know how impactful the way that we talk to ourselves, like how much impact it has on our mood, our feeling, our sense of identity, our self-esteem, like really all of it.
And how freaking hard it can be.
Yeah. Yeah. So like one thing during these life transitions that can be helpful is just reflecting on, what are you saying to yourself? What are you saying? Are you shutting down your emotions and saying, nope, this is going to be good. This move is going to be great. Everything's going to be wonderful. And you're really maybe suppressing how you're actually feeling about things? Are you talking to yourself maybe more negatively? Like, how am I going to do this? This is horrible. And I mean, valid, again, depending on the situation, always valid. But that self-talk, like, especially during these life transitions, can be huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Self-talk is such a hard place to be too, because in really hard moments, it's really hard to find that positive self-talk or those reminders that we need to hear.
Or even neutral self-talk.
Yeah, neutral self-talk, honestly.
That can even be hard.
There's never an expectation that it has to be perfect, but it's generally in that purpose to try and support ourselves. And when we're trying to support other people, especially like we're talking about caring for a parent or a routine and like passings and all these things, I feel like a lot of the times we're the last people we're paying attention to. Mm-hmm. But if anything, if like you do the smallest thing, I guess, for yourself, I feel like self-talk is probably where it's at.
Yeah. So some great questions to ask yourself is, what am I saying to myself? Are these internal comments helping the situation, or are they making this transition more challenging? And I think another thing that can be helpful, again, when we're reflecting and going through these moments, is reminding ourselves that we have, I mean, just even between the two of us here, we have gone through a number of life transitions and we coped with them okay enough that it brought us here today.
Maybe still coping with them?
Maybe still coping with them. But like, yeah, I think, you know, those questions about self-talk are great just so that you can kind of, again, check in on yourself, see, like be a little bit more mindful of how you're talking to yourself and if they're actually helping or not helping this transition. But sometimes recalling our own experiences and how we faced them in the past can be helpful.
Yeah, I think so. And I think even thinking about that, because I'm thinking about my own life transition right now. Yeah. When you're saying that, but sometimes self-talk is one of those things that we can't do without support. Yeah. Sometimes we're saying something and it does have to be our partner or that friend that's saying, stop saying those things. Yeah. Like, it's going to be great. And trying to like change that way that we're talking to ourselves and believing what other people are seeing.
Yeah. You reminded me of something. Sometimes it's your intern telling you to stop talking to yourself that way, because honestly, like one of the transitions that somebody, you know, very kindly shared with us was switching from a stable job to their own business. You were an intern here when we as a practice went through a big transition of growing. We were moving, we were renovating, like there was a lot of that was happening. And I think in that time, like full transparency, I was having a really hard time with it. And like you, like poor you and the other intern, like had to just kind of sit there with me while I was maybe engaging in some of that doubtful self-talk where I'm like, how are we going to do this? Am I supposed to be doing this? Should I, like all of these questions that were coming up, or like, I don't know what I'm doing. And you and Emma, our other intern and now associate, were very kind and just like catching me when I would make those comments. Or even now, like I, you know, maybe this is for another episode, but I think we all experience imposter syndrome, and that's something that came up for me huge when we were growing and building up our team to where it is now. And I really do appreciate like you and Emma and other amazing team members like Destiny, like everybody really. We're just like, Ivonne, you got this. It's okay. You like, don't be so hard on yourself. And so you're right. Sometimes having another person support you through like your self-talk or even catch you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't even catch it ourselves. We're so used to just thinking of this way or talking to ourselves in this way that when we actually say it out loud, someone could be like, wow, that was a little harsh. Like, why are you saying that? So yeah, kind of having somebody to keep you accountable for how you're talking to yourself, to gently check in and give you some of like the more neutral or positive kind of comments you can make to yourself. It really, it can be something that can definitely be done on your own. But if you build up your resources and use people that are around you that love and care about you, to kind of help validate or bring you back, like that can be really helpful. And that's a form of support.
Yeah. And it's perspective, right? Like in that moment when I'm thinking about it, we were able to see so much excitement in the situation.
Yeah.
Because of course we weren't behind the scenes seeing all the other stuff that was probably ridiculously stressful for you. But I think when you have somebody else seeing the other side of it, knowing that somebody can see how much work you're putting into something, or somebody can see the excitement or the fun in it, it's sometimes just nice to have a reminder that, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Like it's okay for us to mess up. It's okay for us to fail. It's okay for us to come out on top and fight our way through it. It's okay that we can't do it alone.
Yeah.
I think this idea that we have to just do everything alone to feel proud is a little bit of bullshit, right? Like we don't have to do that.
Yeah.
If we want to sit here, like you said, we have a great team.
Yeah.
But I think we do our best work when we're in a room together. It is crowded and it's loud and it's crazy.
I love it. I love the chaos.
It's amazing.
That happens.
But the best things happen when we're all together, even when we know that there's some anxiety and we are feeling crazy and there's so much question. But it shows us too that like building that community, even if it is like our workplace and everything that goes with it, you build friendships and connections, support, comfort, all of those things. And it makes a difference for when you're actually leaning into that support.
Yeah. And again, like finding those supports in whatever space you are in during that life transition. It could be neighbors. It could be new family if you're entering into a new family through marriage. It could be mom support groups when you're becoming a new mom,
grief
or other
support
moms.
Groups.
Grief support groups. There's support groups for individuals who are helping or caretaking for a loved one. And there's people that have done it before and you might not even know. Like some people can be a little bit more private about their struggles and their life transitions. And so if we are the ones to kind of show up and ask or be open about our experiences, we get a rush of, you know, me too. I've been there also. Don't worry. Like all of these things. And I think we're in such like, we have, I don't know, I feel very privileged to be a therapist because when we are sitting with our client, they feel so alone in what they're going through, when in reality, we have heard it earlier that day or the day before. And we're like, no, you are not alone in this. And we aren't alone. And so trying to build that community and stay connected to people around us, or finding new ways to form connections, can be really helpful in this, like, again, with any of these life transitions. So I would say that that's like on the top, kind of staying connected.
Yeah. I was just thinking about too, when you were talking about our clients, because absolutely, we do see it so often that there's a lot of people and they're not alone. But I think we also have to pay attention that, you know what, some people don't actually have the ability to have support.
Yeah.
And as much as we're sitting here going, like, build that community, lean into supports, we're also aware,
harder,
right? That it's not always that simple, and some people may not have those things. So when I was thinking about it, if we don't have those supports and we don't have that space to even create them, maybe we're not in the best space. I mean, just like you started with like leaving an abusive relationship, there's a good chance there might not be a lot of supports around you at that point. But then it's also okay to lean on those little things, those moments, I think, that maybe that person smiles on the bus. Maybe there is somebody that's helping you carry a bag. Those are also forms of support that we get to look at in whatever way we choose. And if we feel positive with those, that's giving us a little bit of hope that we know that there is space to build support.
Yeah.
And it matters.
Yeah. I would even say like those are forms of connection.
Absolutely.
Right? Like the smile. I smile at everybody.
So do I.
Probably think I'm such a creep. But like it's just like I want to let that person know that like I see them. Like I smile at a mom dealing with the kid having a tantrum at the mall.
Yeah.
Like I got you. Like I see you.
Like, I've been there.
We've been there. Like, you know, like
sometimes it's so important.
Yeah. And it, like that little smile, that moment of connection with a complete stranger can be so impactful to them.
Yeah.
But I like your point. Like you're right. Connections, building community. We are going to have an episode on this. So we'll apologize. We're just kind of zooming through, but it is really, really hard at times to create that. And so finding connections in other ways, or just feeling connected to the small little group that you may have, or the person that you may have. And also staying connected to yourself. I feel like sometimes we lose that. Leaving an abusive relationship, there's a lot that goes on in there. And we feel like we lost part of ourselves. And so kind of trying to gain connection back to us and ourselves. Same with becoming a mom. That can be a very isolating
changes your whole identity.
Oh yeah. Like it can be, again, another episode, but like it can be quite isolating and lonely. And so trying to, again, find those connections, and sometimes going out of your comfort zone to building those connections in other places. So again, if you're caring for somebody at the hospital, you might pass another loved one who's caring for someone else that share a room. Like, is there a possibility to strike up a conversation to build that connection and to move that connection forward? Because there's a difference between someone saying like, oh, hey, how's it going? Good. And then leaving it there and saying like, look, we're both here. We're both dealing with this situation. And, you know, even though we are all doing that in very different ways, like the two of like, we can strike up a conversation to say like, let's go to the cafeteria and grab some coffee.
Open-ended support. Yeah.
So staying connected is also really important. And I think also throughout this whole conversation, I think we've very much talked about compassion.
Compassion.
Being self-compassionate. Being self-compassionate, towards ourselves, because change is difficult. Oh my God, it is so hard. We're not always going to navigate this crazy thing called life properly or perfectly. I think you've mentioned that a couple times. It's okay to do things not perfectly. What does that even mean? How do you deal with the loss of someone perfectly? How do you deal with, getting married or moving in perfectly? Like that, it's like, it doesn't exist, but it can be an expectation that we have for ourselves. So I think throughout all of this, any kind of transition that you're going in, big or small, it's important that you're compassionate with yourself and validate how you're feeling, especially for yourself. Like, again, other people may see it and may bring in their own feelings about it. Like, oh my God, this is so exciting. You can also validate that, sure, it could be exciting, but at this moment, I'm feeling really anxious, or I'm really scared. I feel really guilty or grief. I'm experiencing all of these complexities of emotions when I'm dealing with this thing that other people think is exciting. So I think like the self-compassion and that self-talk can be connected, but I think definitely
I think the important thing about self-compassion too is realizing that it's actually super okay for you to feel like shit in a moment. Right? Like, I don't know, maybe there's something exciting. Maybe we are sitting here, maybe somebody had a new baby, maybe you're going on a vacation and you're like, this is supposed to be exciting. It's also okay to just be like, but I'm not. Like, own it. We're allowed to own our emotions. We're allowed to sit here and be like, you know what? I'm super happy for this person, but right now I'm struggling. And I'm going to sit with that, and I'm going to figure out what that is for me, and I'm going to work through it. You can be excited at a different time. It doesn't mean that you're any less like supportive. It just means that you're trying to support yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, self-compassion can be so hard, but it can be so amazing.
Yeah.
And I think like you have to take some time for yourself in that.
It's just like giving yourself permission.
Yeah.
Like giving yourself permission to break down, giving yourself permission to just, you know,
Yeah.
be
Take a mental
messy.
health day.
Take a mental health day.
It's been a long week for the two of us.
It has. We need some freaking
Self-compassion.
But like like we just giving ourselves that permission to be authentic in whatever emotion we're experiencing. And again, when we talk about authenticity, it may not, wherever we feel safe, it may not be with whoever, right? Like whoever's there, we can say like, oh yeah, that's exciting. But if it's not a safe person, that you can be like, yeah, I know it's supposed to be exciting, but I'm maybe not feeling that way right now. Like there's going to be your people who you feel safe to share that with. But most importantly, it's like be compassionate and validating to yourself. Give yourself permission to break down. Give yourself permission to need a break, or to say like, I'm going to give myself a couple hours to just sit here and cry because my wedding plans aren't going the way that I wanted or hoped that they would. Yeah. And then after those couple hours, dusting off and being able to, again, try to check in on what it is that you can do moving forward. But I think that, yeah, you're right. Self-compassion. It's permission, giving ourselves permission to screw up, to make mistakes, to do all of that, and still accept ourselves. Because I think with self-compassion, we're accepting all parts of ourselves as they show up in that situation. And
trust ourselves, right? Trust is a huge piece. And I think sometimes that's hard, but I think it's okay to take time and figure out what's the most trust you can give yourself and how you can actually support yourself the best way. There's no rule book for that. I wish we could all sit here and be like, this is how you're going to be self-compassionate.
Oh yeah. But that would make our jobs a lot easier.
Gosh. We're sitting here as therapists still saying there's no perfect answer. So when people ask us, we would both love to sit here and be like, oh my God, yeah, this is exactly how you do it. You never have to see me again. Here's the rule book. Yeah. I love it. You're going to be amazing. I mean, you're going to be amazing regardless. But sorry, it's not that easy of a journey. Yeah. It is exhausting. It's beautiful.
It's repetitive.
Messy. It's repetitive. It's constant.
Yeah.
But we're all living in that same journey, right? We're still sitting across from people in our office, still feeling that same way too. So you're able to still live life. You're able to move forward. Yeah. And still actually be going through that journey.
And that was actually something we talked about last week too with Destiny, about fear, that you can do things even when you're feeling scared.
Yeah, we can do hard things.
We can do the hard things. It's going to suck for a little bit, but we can do it. We have the capacity and capability to do it. And again, it's not going to be easy all the time. It's going to be hard at times. It's going to be, a process at times for sure. But I think also for some of like the quote unquote positive changes, it sometimes can be helpful when you're in the middle of the transition to have something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
Again, this might not fit with everything that we talked about with changing jobs, though. You can look forward to, like being happier at the place that you're working at, the connections that you're going to build there. For getting a divorce, depending again on how that happened, you can look forward to being able to focus on yourself and what you're needing. Having a child, you can again look forward to the fun little moments that you're going to have within also
watching them grow,
which again comes with mixed emotions. But like going to a new city for school, you can look forward to building new connections, being able to explore a new place. Like there are some ways to again like still experience and make space for how you're feeling, while at the same time having something to look forward to. Planning a wedding can be hard and complicated when family members get involved, but you can look forward to the marriage you're going to have, or your honeymoon, that it's just going to be the two of you, and family can just, do their own thing afterwards. But just sometimes it is holding on to that hope and that excitement that you're seeing, that you will have in the future, and then being aware of it when it's there. So being present and in your honeymoon, being like, this is wonderful, love this feeling, being present in that moment when your kiddo starts walking and taking their first steps or crawling, and being like, okay, this is like the thing that I've been waiting for, whatever. But yeah, so
I think too, like some of the harder things we've spoken about with life transitions, I think people automatically assume like there is no positive. What am I supposed to look forward to?
yeah.
But I think it's also okay. And I know there's so many other things that go into that, maybe guilt, sadness, all of it. We can be sad and guilty and mad and all of those things and still look forward to a different place, right? Like when we're looking at grief, maybe there is a passing. We can look forward to the idea that we get to make amazing memories. We get to be able to bring ourselves to a point where it's okay that there's sadness and there's anger and all these things, but we're still moving forward, right? It doesn't always have to be this amazing positive thing, but it can be something that makes you feel okay or even neutral, because maybe neutral is enough.
Yeah. I like that. Neutral. Yeah. Maybe neutral is enough.
Maybe neutral is enough.
We can't always jump to the positives, you're right. And so in some of those more challenging places, just again, sitting in the neutrality,
step by step, right?
Yeah. And I think too, like day by day through all of this, again, with like going back to the question, like how can we prepare for transitional periods? We can attempt to prepare. We can check in on our expectations. We can develop a routine. We can, focus on our self-talk. We can set goals for ourselves. We can practice compassion. We can do all of these things, and it's still going to be hard. Things are still not going to go the way that we intend it to go. And
sometimes we have to make peace with that.
Yeah. So those were some tips and some suggestions that you could try. Again, you are not alone. Life transitions are hard. Again, we're broken records now, but and life transitions sometimes last a little longer.
Yeah.
Or like restart at different moments. Try to find ways where like you can stay connected to yourself and to other people around you. And don't forget to check in on that self-talk and continue practicing self-compassion. Are there any last thoughts you had, Alex?
I mean, I feel like you always do an amazing job on saying what needs to be said, but I guess I'll just keep a reminder that life is messy. Right? There is no rule book. There's even the people that you're looking at every day that you think have everything put together don't, right? We know that more than anybody. But I think it's important to be kind to yourself. Have patience. Take some time and really understand what you need. And sometimes it's okay to just sit in the messy. It's okay to sit in the uncomfortable and lower expectations if we have to, right? Like, you're the only person that is going to be able to change those things for you in most points. So trust yourself, right? Take some time, do it, and lean on people that you can.
Yeah. And like one last little thing, like I was ending before, focus on those small moments now. Yeah. Sometimes we can jump into the future and it can either cause us more anxiety or cause us to get some of those unattainable expectations. And so just really trying to stick with what is day by day, hour by hour, if we need to just really try to keep us, focused and grounded and present in what it is that we're needing in that particular moment.
Yeah. Small steps have huge impacts.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. And we'll see you again next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Outside the Therapy Room. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you reside in Ontario and are interested in working with one of our therapists, please visit our website in the show notes. If you reside outside of Ontario, a quick Google search or search through Psychology Today will help you find a therapist near you.